Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 DocLands Documentary Film Festival. I'm Melanie Nichols, CFI Education Program Manager, and I'm here with the directors of the films that were chosen to be part of our DocLands Education Shorts program that we call Shorts Docs, Identity and Empowerment. I'd like to introduce our directors. The director of Walls Cannot Keep Us from Flying, Jonathan Mehring. Jonathan is an award-winning photographer based in Brooklyn, New York. He's author of Skate the World, Photographing One World of Skateboarding, published by National Geographic. His unique style of adventure travel, coupled with action and lifestyle photography, has taken him to over 30 countries around the globe. Welcome, Jonathan. Director of Into the Circle, Meg Griffiths and Scott Faris. Meg Griffiths and Scott Faris are the documentary filmmakers behind Universe Creative, a storytelling agency committed to social impact video storytelling. Meg and Scott have collaborated on short films for the past 10 years with an emphasis on education, rural communities, and Indigenous issues. They're currently working on their first feature-length film in West Virginia. Hey. Evangeline M. Mitchell is the director of Becoming Black Lawyers. Evangeline is a lawyer, author and publisher, social entrepreneur, nonprofit founder, and documentary filmmaker. She's a graduate of HBCU Prairie View A&M University, the University of Iowa College of Law, and the Harvard University Graduate School of Education. She's currently completing her certificate in documentary arts from Duke University's Center for Documentary Studies and her certificate in film and TV industry essentials from the New York University Tisch School of the Arts. Welcome, Evangeline. Brett Marty and Joshua Izenberg, we have Brett with us today, are the co-directors of Game Hawker. Brett Marty began as a commercial director and made the transition to filmmaking with a handful of documentary projects and his narrative directorial debut, Youth, which won a handful of jury awards and played at more than 30 festivals, including Cannes. His latest docs have been commissioned or featured by The New Yorker, The Atlantic, and National Geographic. Welcome to all of you. First of all, I wanted to ask, how did you get interested in and meet your subjects and come to make your films? Evangeline, would you start?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So how did I meet the subjects for my documentary? I put out a call on social media. And I asked other Black lawyers if they would be willing to share their experiences and their perspectives on the process of becoming lawyers for a documentary project. So it started that way, and I got about response from maybe about 75, 80 people. And that's how I got the people that are featured in the documentary. I just put out a call. I should say that I am involved. I do kind of have a sort of a big community in terms of knowing a lot of other lawyers, knowing a lot of law students, knowing a lot of students who aspire to become lawyers. And I've also been hosting events focused on trying to help empower and give information, resources, connections to aspiring Black lawyers for, I would say at this point, 18 years. So I know a lot of people in the legal community. So when I put it out, I think, people pretty much took what I was doing seriously, even though I'm new to filmmaking.
Okay. Megan, Scott?
So I began my career as a 5th grade teacher in South Dakota on the Rosebud Reservation. And when Meg and I started our storytelling work together, that is a place that we did and continue to hold near and dear to our hearts. And so we've done a lot of work, have had the great privilege of doing a lot of work in South Dakota. And it was through a previous project that we filmed in 2018 that we became aware of the Native American Community Academy in Albuquerque, New Mexico, whose work is tied very intimately with some of the education work that's happening in South Dakota. And so that was sort of our entree to the school, and it sort of spiraled from there.
Thank you. Brett?
Our story was my co-director, Josh Izenberg. We were sharing an office space, and he came in one day, and we were just kind of in the phase of like, okay, finishing up some projects and starting some new ones. And he had this idea, is like, hey, you know, falconry would be really fun to do. It's visual, it's repeatable, cinematic. So he just Googled falconers in California, and Shawn Hayes came up, and he just looked really interesting. And we reached out to him, and he was really into the idea. So we just kind of went from there.
And Jonathan, how did you get interested in the subject, and how did you meet them and come to make your film?
I worked in the skateboarding industry as a still photographer for many years. And a friend of mine, Kenny Reed, after he retired from professional skating, he helped to co-found a nonprofit in Palestine that kind of supports underprivileged kids in their communities and gives them something positive to do and focus on. And he actually invited me out to their summer camp to shoot stills. And at the time I was looking to kind of transition into more filmmaking projects. And so I said, well, how about instead of stills, we do a documentary? And he agreed. So he connected me with the program director, who is a Palestinian guy, and they invited me out. And I went, pitched the idea to a DP, a friend of mine, Joe Bressler, and we went out there and we interviewed actually many people, and Omar and Yasmin were the most compelling. And so we decided to kind of move forward and tell those stories specifically.
And while we have you, Jonathan, would you talk about, I want to ask all of you also, what was the most challenging part of making your film, and what was the most satisfying?
There were some logistical challenges, kind of getting in and out of Palestine, that were, I guess, maybe more exciting to tell the stories about. But the biggest challenge, I think, was the fact that this was really my first film, and that we interviewed over 20 people, and how to narrow all that footage down into something that is a story. And you know, and kind of figuring out how to make people care about the characters and things like that, you know.
Brett, most challenging, most satisfying?
The most challenging is a pretty easy answer. Well, I think at least the top of mind is falconry is really hard, and filming something like that where the bird just kind of does what it does, and it is chasing prey that's evolved to escape, and it's not like hunting with a gun, you know, where you shoot something and it dies. It's like it has to catch that prey. So filming that, we had to just go out dozens of times to capture, you know, to get the kind of footage that we wanted to give people an impression of what the kind of craft and sport is like and how it feels to do it. So yeah, I would say that was a big challenge, just getting the kind of footage that give you a clear idea of what it was like. Satisfying is probably, I think, just being out in some pretty beautiful places. We went to Hungary, and just the Eastern Sierras. It's just really great place to film. So I think that was a big rewarding part of it.
Meg and Scott are into the circle.
Might have different answers here, but I'll start. When we set out to tell this story, the goal was to follow our main subject, Andrew Hollowhorn, who was a senior at NACA through his senior year. And so the structure of the narrative was very clear. We just follow him through his senior year, and it ends with his graduation. COVID hit right in the middle of his senior year. And so it obviously posed a ton of logistical challenges from the production and producing side. And we kind of had to rethink the ending of the film. I think a positive outcome of that was that we really got to do that in partnership with the family. And I think what we ended up with was something that actually told a much deeper story. And so we were really happy with the outcome of that. But I think, those challenges were real and significant. And there was a moment like halfway through production, we were like, I don't know if we're going to be able to land the plane, where is this headed? And then in terms of what was satisfying, I think just having the opportunity to give NACA the space to highlight what a positive example of Indigenous education looks like, reflecting that back to them and also to the wider education community, I think was just such a highlight. And obviously the timing of the release of the film happened when a lot of the news was coming out of Canada about like the unmarked graves from the boarding schools. And so I think this just represented a really positive example of what's positive in terms of how a community can move forward with resilience. So for me, that was the highlight.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah. Evangeline, challenge satisfaction.
For the challenges, I would say trying to get this done during COVID. So the team that I worked with was remote. So I knew I needed to get some different editors and someone I could work with well to get it done, sound people, and just all the different people that you need to get it done. I already had the raw footage, but I was just in get it done mode and trying to find people remotely. That was challenging, but I was able to get it done. So I would say working through COVID. Also, I would say dealing with a limited budget and knowing that, okay, I'm paying for this myself. Let me figure out, how I can get it done, despite the fact that, I decided I'm not going to wait and try to do the crowdfunding and all of that. I just really want to get this done. So I would just say remotely working with a tiny budget and just staying really focused through that was a challenge. And also I wanted to get, B-roll footage. I wanted to interview a lot more people. There's a lot more I wanted to do, but I was, again, in the middle of COVID, stuck at home with my family. And I said, you know what, despite these challenges, I'm going to push through. And I decided to go ahead and just get a short done. And for me, that was like game changing, because at that point I said, you know what, I think I have enough. And then I talked to a few other filmmakers and they said, yeah, you have some good stuff. It's probably not what you wanted to do in terms of a feature or a series or whatever, but you have enough for a short. So that kind of turned things around in terms of feeling differently about it. In terms of what was most gratifying or satisfying about the documentary getting it done was just getting it done. This particular subject matter has been, this has been a journey for me. I've been wanting to do a documentary on the additional challenges that Black people here in America face and, in the process of becoming lawyers. And it's something that a lot of people don't know about or think about. And it's something that even when I was in law school that we really didn't even talk about. But this has been something I was talking about doing, I would say probably since my second year in law school. And I graduated from law school in the late 90s. So it's been a long time. And so life has gotten in the way. I have kids, I'm married, I have a lot of other different things happening, but just getting it done has been satisfying. And also the impact, because this past February, we were able to screen the film in over 80 law schools in the country. And I would say there are about 200, a little over 200 American Bar Association approved law schools. And in the schools where they were able to screen the film and where I did get the feedback, which is about half of them from the law students associations, the Black law students associations hosted the film. It really resonated with students, and it didn't matter if they attended Ivy League schools, schools in the South, the Midwest, West Coast, East Coast, it didn't matter. It resonated, and the students said that it really made a difference, and it opened up discussion that they probably wouldn't have even had at the school or with each other. So for me, knowing that after all these years, just kind of pushing through to get it done and knowing that it resonates with people, and it's not like, that was an issue. These were issues back then. We don't really get it. People really saying that this does make a difference. This resonates, and this can really be a way to make a difference and make a change. I think that's the most satisfying thing.
So that's for the students that are there for that slice
Yeah.
of time. Do you think some of the schools might end up using it as a part of the introduction package for kids coming into law school?
Yeah, so actually, as of, I believe, February of this year, for the very first time in the history of, I guess, law schools as we know them, the American Bar Association recently passed a resolution requiring, as a part of law schools maintaining their accreditation, that they teach anti-bias training, that they teach anti-racism, all of those things that it's never been anything required before. For the very first time, it's now a part, it has to be a part of the curriculum. So when students come in, as a part of their orientation, while they're there, as a part, somehow as a part of the curriculum, and then before they leave, they have to have some type of education, you know, on anti-racism, anti-bias, these issues. And when I was in school, it wasn't something that was even discussed.
Yeah.
And so now it's required. So prayerfully, it can be used for that. It can be a tool for discussion. But the students who, the lawyers who I had featured in the documentary, they went to law school from, I would say, 2006 to 20, I believe, and graduated between 2006 and 2019. And so, yeah, but the stories of those lawyers that we featured still resonated with them.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see it every 5 years to see if it changed at all, or every 10 years or something. Okay, thanks. So Megan Scott, with Into the Circle, you have said that in the film that academics taught through culture, that culture is inseparable from academic success. Could you talk a little bit about how you found that marriage of culture and academics, why culture is so important to student success?
Yeah, I mean, I'm speaking both as a filmmaker and also as a former fifth grade teacher when I answered the question, but the purpose of school is about so much more than just filling empty vessels with information. And I think that's how we have historically thought about education in this country. And I think it's a deeply flawed approach. Why is academic success and culture connected? Because people are affirmed and validated and empowered through the validation of their cultures. When you can bring someone's history and culture and the strengths that they have inherently to bear in the classroom, suddenly they become active participants in their educational experience rather than just recipients of information that you're trying to dole out to them. I say this as someone who wasn't always great at this as a fifth grade teacher. You know, I was very young when I was a fifth grade teacher and I was learning. It's hard to be a teacher. It's hard to get this stuff right. But in some ways, having struggled with it as a fifth grade teacher, I have very deeply internalized the value of cultural affirmation and making sure that culture is represented in education. So I hope that answers your question. It's a little bit of a spiraling response.
Well, let me ask on the other side for you, Meg, without having culture included, what as American educational system as a whole, what do you think that what is the deficit that hurts children by not including culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we learned and saw in practice at NACA was that if a child's background and heritage is reflected, there's just additional opportunity for a child to be invested and engaged in the education process. And I think what we see when that doesn't happen is that kids often feel disengaged. They feel like, well, this isn't for me. I don't belong here. And so I just think there's so much that's lost if that doesn't happen. And this is why I think we were so compelled by NACA in telling this story, because we think that there is so much that schools across the country can learn from a model like this. This doesn't just have to work in an Indigenous community. I think we can all be asking these questions about our own backgrounds, our own cultures, and what we need to truly be engaged in the process of learning.
Thank you. Brett, for your film Game Hawker, what can falcons teach us about living in partnership with wild creatures and wild places?
I think there's, well, first of all, a lot of patience, but then just kind of having an animal, a wild animal, especially a predator, be such a big part of your life, because it really does take over a lot of your time and energy. So you just get a glimpse of what it's like and how hard it is to live in the wild. With something that we forget, like in cities or even in rural areas, because there's so much interest in that sort of thing. But you just have to spend a lot of time focusing on your bird and making sure it's out in nature doing what it does. So yeah, I think I think that's a question really for a falconer to answer, probably more so, because that would probably be a lot more multifarious of an answer. But I think a lot of things, but those are just a couple.
How did you happen to have Yvonne Chevenard, I hope I pronounced that correctly, the founder of Patagonia, as a kind of talking head in your film?
Sure. Yvonne Chenard. So this is our film was a kind of Patagonia was a production partner on the film and supported the film. And, he was a falconer, and I think in a lot of ways, because he was a falconer when he was a teenager. And so he was interested in just being a part of the film, and came out for a couple of days and flew Shawn's falcons with him and that sort of thing.
He's a hero, personal hero of mine.
Yeah.
Jonathan, walls cannot keep us from flying. I wanted to ask you, what does skateboarding mean to these kids, and the juxtaposition of personal freedom and the occupation? How do they hold both of those, in their hands? And, how do they find hope?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. What skateboarding means to them is, basically it means everything to them, because when you live in what seems to be essentially a giant POW camp with its own economy, kind of, is once you find something that gives you some semblance of freedom, be it mental or physical or whatever, then that kind of just becomes what you focus on. And I mean, they're used to their friends and relatives getting harassed and arrested, and a lot of kids throw stones at Israeli soldiers, and the camp was kind of started to kind of give these kids something else to do, because the town where the skate park is actually about 100 yards, where the skate park itself is about 100 yards from the security fence. And in that part of Palestine, it's a fence, not a giant concrete wall like what you've seen on the news and stuff like that. But yeah, it gives them community, and it gives them, that's where all their friendships are based. It gives them a physical outlet for frustrations, and it gives them a place to be creative, because 50% of skating is creative thinking, and how to perform a trick, or where you can do a trick. It's all about kind of analyzing your surroundings and seeing how you can move throughout them. So that's why you don't have to skate at a skate park. You can go out into the town, you can skate anywhere, as long as there's some pavement. So yeah, does that kind of answer what you're asking? Okay.
Yeah. Evangeline, and all of you, I wanted to ask you, our particular audience at DocLands Education will be high school students, and they just saw your film, and I wanted to ask you, what effect do you want or hope that your film has on these students, in their thinking, in their own activities, maybe activism? What is your hope? Evangeline, would you answer first?
I think the biggest thing is I want for them to have empathy, and for what other students, especially what they've endured or what they have to go through, to understand that people can be in the same educational environment, and they can have vastly different experiences. They could be be in the same building, have the same classes, the same professors, all of that, and just have vastly different experiences based on what they look like, but also based on the historical context that they're coming from when they walk into these institutions. Some people walk in thinking they're going for a job. Other people walk in with the weight of their history, their community, expectations that they have to make a difference. So just understanding that, people have different experiences, even in the same institutions. And also, I think the biggest takeaway is understanding. I think a lot of times we see people, okay, they're a doctor, they're a lawyer, they have PhDs, whatever it is that they have, we see the final product, but a lot of times we don't think about the process. And so that's why I think this is important to explain that a lot of people face tough barriers, but they persevere, they continue on, they persist, and that they have to have resilience. And so I think it's important to share those stories so that they can understand that there are people who go into law schools. It's not just going in, working hard, and then you get out. A lot of people have a lot of things pushing against them where it would be easy to say, you know what, forget this. I'm not dealing with this, just whatever. But it's important, just like one of the subjects in the film said, remember your why. So just little things like that, I hope that they can take away and remember that no matter what they want to pursue, there will always be different issues. And in this country, race continues to be an issue. So there are people who may not want them there as they, have ambitions to do more and be more. People will tell you that, but a lot of times we don't talk about that. When you get there, there are additional obstacles. So just to have them know that different people have different experiences, and no matter what obstacles they face, to push through, and to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we all have to push through all types of mountains and obstacles. But if you keep going, you can get there.
I feel like resilience is a theme of all of your movies. People have challenges and they've pushed through. Megan, Scott, would you let us know what your hope of effect of your film is for our students?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Evangeline was just describing, I think we hope that people take away that human beings are not blank slates, especially not little ones that arrive in a classroom. We all bring a history, a context, a perspective, lots of strengths. And it's a huge injustice when that isn't acknowledged. And then in a broader sense, connected to, but not entirely the same as this, I think there are lots of stereotypes that exist about Indigenous communities in America that are rooted in a particular historical lens. We're all used to seeing like the Dances with Wolves story about how these communities once were, but there's not nearly enough attention paid to the thriving and resilient communities that exist today. And the strengths of those communities, right? Like these are people that are so often depicted as being one and the same with their struggles, right? Alcoholism, poverty. These are the elements that typically lead stories about modern Indigenous communities. And we hope that in every story that we tell that touches on these communities, that we can complicate and combat some of those stereotypes and oversimplifications.
And I'll just add too that I think for the high schoolers out there watching, there's so much to be learned from Andrew's story. And to your point, Melanie, the resilience that he displayed and really lifting up his entire family. So I think there's like a role for all of us in being a part of our families, being a part of our communities, and shining a light on the path ahead, even when it feels dark, or even when it feels like you're the youngest one in your family. So I think Andrew's like really an inspiration to a lot of young people out there.
Yeah. Brett, your film, especially as it connects to wild places, do you have a hope that your film will have as an effect on
Yeah, I think, hopefully people can just take from it, that there's a lot of things you can do with your life. And even if there aren't people around you that look like you that are doing it or that have encouraged you to do it, that doesn't mean you can't make that your life's passion. Even if it doesn't pay much money, you can still enjoy it and love it and find a way to make it work. So yeah, I think that, and just kind of be inspired to think outside the box a little bit, and because there's a lot of different things you can do with your life.
Thank you. Jonathan, how would you like our students to, what do you hope that our students get from your film?
I guess, it's not
Some may
specific
not
to
be
them. It's
skateboarders, so.
right. I think just for anyone watching it, really, it's to have a look inside of what life is like in Palestine and see that it's not all resistance and military and explosions and death and whatever. There's regular people having their regular lives there and trying to make do the best they can and have fun and just have friends and relationships and just like they are.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank you all for joining us at DocLands, CFI Education at DocLands, and I loved all of your films. I'm so thrilled that we're being able to share them with students and with our adult audiences, and we can't wait to see what you all do next. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.